everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Westworld, Season 2, Episode 3, Virtue Fortuna, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. Virtue and luck?
Fortune?
Virtue, okay, well, then it sounds exactly what it sounds like then. Good deal. Kim, Amir, Alonso.
I'm so excited to hear what you think about this.
You sound like you hate it.
Yeah. I don't hate it, but I kind of, much like the characters in the show, I feel like we're stuck in a loop. I feel like this is going to be another season where we have to sort of like play this guessing game of what's happening in what order, and that's going to matter later.
That's funny you say that because they're trying to make it more open, like by introducing all these new parks and everything, but at the same time, we're stuck in this loop.
Well, yeah, I mean, we get the India, the Raj world at the beginning, and then clearly Samurai world at the end.
Shogun world.
Oh, is that a thing? Is that actually called? Okay, Shogun world. I like that. But you know, the fact that, for example, the Rebus, which is the guy that they reprogram to be, you know, a better shot and a nicer person, we saw him get killed at the beginning of the first episode of this season on the beach, which means that hasn't happened yet. And you know, there's that whole thing of when, you know, Bernard comes back and you know, he has been separated from Charlotte, and
I'm having a hard time figuring out where Charlotte is at this point, but I kind of like what's going on. Speaking of Rebus, I love that scene. I love like the humor in this episode. Yes, because we've played Grand Theft Auto 5, so we see him as Trevor, and we're like, yes, that is how a woman would react to Trevor.
Yeah.
I liked the humor that was in this episode. Yeah. I think we're still figuring out a lot of it. Of course, this is Westworld, so there are theories abound. I have a lot of them myself, but maybe we should recount the episode first.
Yeah, let's start with Raj World.
Okay, right. So we begin in what would appear to be colonial India with guests who are there to hunt Bengal tigers, and thankfully the previously on reminded us that we've seen a Bengal tiger on this show before, and two guests basically kind of dance around each other to make sure that they are in fact both guests and not hosts. And once they're satisfied with that, off they go on a hunt, but they discover that clearly the rebellion has begun and the previous guests have been slaughtered by their hosts, and now they're probably next, although the guy gets shot right away, but the woman manages to grab what is it, flintlock? Is that what they're called?
That was like a sawed-off shotgun or something.
Yeah, like a two-chamber deal. Yeah. So she manages to hold off the host, but then gets chased by a tiger outside of the zone onto a cliff overlooking the beach, and it does not go well.
Yeah, so a couple big things.
And that's the tiger that washes up.
And that's the tiger that washes up. So we actually see the border of a park for the first time. A little interesting that I read with the director of this episode, he explained how bullets work, finally, like the big question. Basically, the guns, they find out whether you're aiming at a human or a host, and the velocity of the bullet changes. So that's
why he only got a little bruise.
Yeah, that's why he only got a little bruise, but yeah.
We also saw that the tiger was able to cross the border without exploding, so maybe those rules are off now. All the hosts can leave the park.
Well, I mean, clearly they, you know, if they're trying desperately to get Abernathy, you know, onto the train, you know, he is designed to get out of the park because whatever he's got in his head is an important thing. And of course, in the flashback last week, we saw, you know, the Delos anniversary party where all of those hosts came out. So there's a way around that, obviously.
So the big theory right now is Grace, the girl in the Raj world, might be Man in Black Williams' daughter.
I've heard that too, because I saw her and I thought she's the Man in Black of Raj.
Remember, you see his daughter when she's way younger, 35 years ago. So now she's grown up and she's this person.
Interesting.
So that's an interesting theory. I should also make honorable mention, they were playing Seven Nation Army. On
on the sitar, right, which is the new player piano.
Yeah.
But wasn't it distracting how that was clearly filmed in Griffith Park? And
yeah, totally. All of this is shot in California.
It was just like, that's not India.
Well, yeah, but the whole point is that none of this is where it's supposed to be. It's all on an island somewhere, so it's also not a dusty western town.
They're really pushing this theme of,
I suppose,
colonialism, like hard, like with the Westworld, Shogun worlds, and Raj world. It's like I'm trying to figure out like what they're trying to say, and then you got
think about who's going to these parks.
It's white privilege world.
Very
it is
privileged, wealthy people who want to live that
We're
fantasy.
in the future where like these things shouldn't matter, but they just want to go play pretend in times where like we get to.
It was simpler.
Yeah. And then you go from like India to Native American Indian.
So I have a theory about Ghost Nation, because they seem to have taken the woman. Her name was Grace, I think. And they were, remember, at one point in this episode, they confronted Hector and Maeve and Lee.
Yes.
And they were like, you two can go, but we need Lee. And they said no, and Maeve can't control them. I think they're on someone else's control or loop, because Maeve can't affect them in any way. And I don't think they're necessarily hurting the people they're taking, but they are gathering people, which makes me think someone we know is behind this.
And building an army.
Maybe.
Could be. Obviously we have a lot of this is devoted to Dolores and the Confederados, and Dolores proves herself to be as ruthless as any of her human controllers in terms of like creating cannon fodder and sort of using people for her own ends.
It makes me wonder if that's the Wyatt personality that's in play.
I have to keep reminding myself that they're one and the same now. Their personalities have been
I'm wondering if Dolores isn't fully like woke. Like maybe she's on another loop that she doesn't know about at this point.
It's possible.
And it's interesting because obviously you have like Teddy, who is in love with Dolores, but not so much with Wyatt. And then you have Dolores, who is like, wants her father to be her father, but he is just this walking glitch at the moment.
I know, they're still tied to their programming in some way, like Maeve and her daughter, who doesn't really exist or isn't really her daughter. And then we have, Teddy told this story in season 1 about, I was Wyatt's right-hand man, but then he killed the general, and then he turned on me, and it's like, it's happening now. So that's what makes me think Dolores is on a loop.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, so much of this show has been about like, how do we know our own memories are real? How do we know we're alive? How do we know we have a soul? And I think now they're sort of playing this notion of like, here is a narrative that has been created within the show. Oh no, this is the narrative of the show.
Yeah, I like the layers. I know some people find it frustrating, but I sort of love it.
I think I mentioned this last week. It's gotten to the point where I empathize with the people who say, you know what, I'm gonna binge. I'm gonna binge this thing when it's done, because I find that on a week-to-week basis, just sort of like, calm down, show. We're all impressed with how you're kind of juggling all this stuff around, but I want to just be able to kind of go with it, and then on a secondary level, start parsing it. And to me, this show just exists to be parsed, and I don't. There's an audience for that kind of narrative. It's very sort of like Thomas Pynchon or something. But I get a little frustrated.
I have a question. Did Bernard take the Abernathy data, and what is he going to do with it if he did?
Ooh. Could he access it finally?
Remember he got the one-time key?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Which is a really convenient thing to have. Hacking and hacking and hacking, and suddenly it works.
So someone zoomed in on what the file of that key was, and it was like _passenger. And the finale of season 2 is called The Passenger. So that has to be connected somehow.
Very good. Good detective work, Amir.
I'm kind of annoyed though, like my one personal problem is like how incompetent the security forces are. And just like you're trying to
bad
fight
they are at shooting and how good.
Western, and they're just like coming in just like, it's like terrible to watch that whole scene play out.
Yeah, like when
Like, where are your drones?
Where's
the future?
Where's the air cover? Like the helicopter.
Where's the mortar? Where's the drones? Why do they have to charge in like in a vulnerable way? Exactly.
But I did also like going back to the whole thing about the narratives and stuff. Who's the hack writer who's tagging along?
Lee?
That's Lee. Yes, I like that he knows the dialogue in advance of the people who think that they're making it up as they go along.
So we got a lot of William in the next episode from the preview. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week when we look at episode 4. Do you know the title? Episode 4.
Episode 4.